Saints 22, Castleford Tigers nil. The third time this season that the Tigers have had the big zero behind their name. Of course, Wigan and Warrington have done that to them already this season. This was a game that Saints had to win, having lost quite convincingly, it has to be said, at the MKM Stadium last week. Helens would have really put the boot right up the backside going into this game. No mistakes, boys, is what he'd have been saying. And Saints did exactly that. A workmanlike championship performance from them, the champion team that they are. They're now back into the top six in fifth position, still with that game in hand against Huddersfield Giants to come. And now you really don't see Saints slipping out of the top six again this season. They will remain there and will have their eyes firmly placed on further going up the table as the rounds and weeks go by. Now, in the post-match press conference, Andy Last seemed quite happy with his team's performance, and a lot of people might be scratching their heads as to why that was. 22-0 sounds quite convincing. And when you consider that St Helens ran for over 1,500 metres to Castleford's 732, I mean, that's almost as bad as Huddersfield were last week. So we've got to take that into account, of course, against Leeds. I think Huddersfield were just under 700. This was 732. So, the stats would say, hang on a minute, what's he got to be happy about? Well, it started off really well. Riley Dean, of course, making his debut from Warrington, 40-20 very early in the game. You're thinking, oh, hello. Dean with Miller in the halves. Broadbent put a hooker. We saw that utilised to great effect against Warrington earlier in the campaign, about 2 rounds ago it was now. So, Andy Last had a really decent spine there and got off to a pretty good start. And, at half time, it was only 10 points to nil. They were in the game. They weren't not in the game. They were having a go at it, to be fair, with Castleford. But as the second half ploughed on, really, the gulfing quality between these two was there for all to see. And, I have to say, I still don't think Saints are on fire. I have to say that. I think there's so much more that Saints can produce. I mean, 22-0, I was saying that Saints could produce so much more. It's unbelievable, isn't it? But it's true. It really, really is true that Saints could and should get a lot better between now and the end of the season. One player that I was really pleased for was John Bennison, back in the side for St Helens. I really like John Bennison. I think he's a fine young player. And of course, this season, I don't know if injuries have had much to do with it, but he seems to have preferred Ritson. In this game, it was a Party and Bennison that he had on the wings. And I just thought I'd have a quick look at how these two players compare, Ritson and Bennison. Both have played 10 games this season. But here's the interesting statistics now. Bennison has scored 5 tries and created 1. Ritson has scored 2 tries. So there's a big difference there. In terms of tackle bust, still goes the way of Bennison, 28-27. Clean breaks going the way to Ritson, 7-5. And both of them averaging about 8.1 metres. The whole point about wing play is finishing potential. And of course, the odd setup for another try doesn't go amiss, does it? And Bennison, for me, is producing that kind of quality. I personally would have Bennison on the wing for St Helens. I don't know what you St Helens fans think about that. I think Ritson's a fine player, and I think it bodes brilliantly for the future. You could see T. Ritson with a bit more Super League experience under his belt, and Bennison being the long-term wingers for the champions. You could see that. But you're really, really pleased for Bennison in this one. Yes, he got his try, he got his assist, and he ran for 206 metres. He averaged 18 metres a carry, did John Bennison. And when you consider, you'll see Bennison's try at the end of In the Sheds, he didn't have to run far for that one. And it just goes to show what his work rate was like in this game. He was brilliant. Another player who was bang at it again, Johnny Lomax. We love a bit of Johnny Lomax here at Super League Raw. 3 try assists in this one. He was at his superb best. And Doddy had a decent game with a boot as well, it has to be said, for St Helens. It is quite ominous, isn't it, that Saints, can win 22-0 really without breaking sweat. Don't get me wrong, Castleford were pretty competitive in the first half, but not competitive enough. So let's see now where these go next. As for St Helens, well, they've got the Warrington Wolves at the Halliwell Jones Stadium this Friday night. That shouldn't worry them too much based on Warrington's form. And then a real belter against the Catalan Dragons at home on July 14th. Then it's the Leeds Rhinos at home on July the 28th. So that's how their July is panning out. And of course, within that, a very tricky, it has to be said, Challenge Cup semi-final game against the also in form Lee Leopards. As for the Castleford Tigers, well, like I say, they now need to start looking over the shoulder with Wakefield's win this week, surprising win against Salford. They have got the Lee Leopards at home this week. You just can't see them getting much out of that, can you? Then it's Hull FC away, then Hull Kingston Rovers away before taking on Huddersfield at home at the beginning of August. So, some tricky fixtures there for them. Two away games at both the two Hull sides, and of course, Lee at home. That's going to be really tricky for Andy Last's men. Obviously, Dean, it was his first game with Miller. It's going to probably take a bit of time for those two to gel, it would have to be said. But yeah, Castleford, you've got to start worrying if you're a Castleford fan. I personally think there's every possibility you could be drawn into a relegation scrap. And what's really interesting is there's only 75 points in points difference between them and Wakey. And I think the way in which these two play in terms of how close their defeats are, both are going to lose a lot of games between now and the end of the season. So it actually could not only come down to getting the wins and getting the 2 points for those two sides, but actually how many they lose by when they do lose. It's going to be very interesting to see how that one pans out. As for St. Helens, well done to you, John Bennison. Outstanding. Really pleased for John Bennison in this one. 22 points to nil. Saints in the top 6, looking upward. I hate to say, but you can't count. You just really can't count out the Saints, can you? You really can. Subscribe, share, comment. We'll look forward to hearing your views on this one. We'll see you next time on In the Sheds.